What's up, everybody? Episode 21 here. We're finally legal drinking age. I hope you enjoy. We're also at our first welding video. Finally, actually putting some parts together permanently. All right. So I want to kind of give a rundown of my welder, some of the equipment that I use, and some of the welding that I did for the rear end. Okay. And then we'll also talk about some plans and how the rear end's going to come together and how the four link's going to be set up on it and stuff like that. So we'll go ahead and just jump right in it. So TIG welding wise, I run a AHP 200X. Okay. Now that is a pretty old welder. I'm guessing probably 8 years, maybe 9 years. I think they got like a 210 or a 200 XD or I don't know. They have a couple different models now, but it's a cheap, China made, whatever, cheap box. They're bought on Amazon usually. I think when this one was released, it was like $650. And what you do is you put a replacement pedal on it, a better pedal, and a better torch cable, and a better ground strap. And it's a solid welder at that point with some good consumables. So this one has a CK torch with not a flex lock, but a flex head, which is the cheap version that will eventually break and leak. I'm going to eventually get a water cooler with a flex lock eventually. I really would like an Everlast welder probably, just for an upgrade, but race car funds or a welder, mine works. Here we are. I know so many chassis shops and automotive shops that have started out with this AHP welder, and for $700 you buy the new torch cable and stuff like that. You get yourself a good regulator. You're in it for less than $1,000 still, and you have a really solid setup. So that's the welder I run. I use a gold style lens. I don't have a auto tint. I mean, I guess technically I do have an auto tint, but I'm not a big fan of it. I just like my gold simple lens. They're very clean and see-through. I've been enjoying these Blue Demon gloves. I got a couple different pairs. This is more like a MIG welder style, protects the wrist. But for the most part, I've just been using these. Every year they do a breast cancer awareness sale. So I picked these up for like 15 or 20 bucks a pair. They're good leather. They last a while. So this is the pair that I bought like a year and a half ago. And after I buy a new pair for welding, I turn the old pair into fabrication gloves. So then they usually start getting torn up, dirty, cut, stuff like that. But that's just kind of, I keep my gloves on rotation. With doing the extra fabrication that I've been doing on this, I'll probably have to go to like a 4 to 6 month rotation, to be honest with you. When I was doing this stuff for a living, it was like every other month I was getting a set of gloves. But good thin leather, flexible. I love them. I run a big bottle of straight argon, dual ball style regulators, one for back purging and then the other one to the welder. The consumables that I've been running are a mixture of Furic stuff. So I have a Jazzy 10, a Fupa 12, and then a BBW from him as well. And what I've been welding this 4-link stuff with is a 12. So I have a 12 in there currently. It works good. I've only used his cups in the last like 10 years, to be honest with you. And I've had such good success with them that I just haven't bothered trying anybody else. And then I have a variety of like glass ones that he sells. I think those are some 8s or 10s. And then this is like a glass 5 that I do all my aluminum welding with. Pretty much all the consumables I've been getting from him. He's a smaller shop. Well, I guess he was a smaller shop. He's pretty big now, but it's just a normal guy that runs a business, and I like supporting those kind of guys instead of the larger corporations. And then tungsten wise, It's been a mixture of Ferrix 2% lanthanated blue, the Blue Demon multi-mix pink. I do have some red. That stuff is technically radioactive, so I don't use it unless I have to. And then I also use this flexible tungsten. It's True Flex by Blue Demon, and you could actually bend it. It's bendable tungsten. The stuff's pretty awesome. When you need to get into a tight spot, it works really good when you got to get into a tight spot. So here's a piece that I actually ground and bent, and sometimes just that little bit of an angle really helps you. So consumable wise, that's what I've been using. Really just a bunch of Ferric stuff and Blue Demon. You know, I've used there's a precision ground, diamond ground, tungsten that I really like. It's just a little expensive for what I've been doing lately. Filler rod wise, Crown rod is local to me, so I have some Crown, and then I have some Blue Demon rod, and then I also have some specialty stuff from some oddball companies, but for the most part, Crown or Blue Demon's the rod that I use. This was welded with ER70 S6, I believe. It could have been S2, but I think it's S6. Unfortunately, the smaller diameter stuff just doesn't have a stamping on it. And I know that sometimes I've bought S2 and sometimes I bought S6. I'm not really concerned about mixing up the two. When it comes to the cage work and stuff, I will buy a box specifically for the cage that's sealed, and I keep it super clean. This stuff kind of sat out, and you can actually see some like staining and stuff like that. I do clean it with acetone, but it definitely gets stained up. You always want to clean your rod. Realistically, I could have Scotch-Brighted it and then cleaned it with some acetone, but I think that kind of covers the welder and the equipment that I use. If you guys ever have any questions of like flow rate and amperages and certain settings, I can help you where I can. I don't do welding for a living. I know just enough to be dangerous. Oh, another thing I want to talk about is this hat that you guys always see me wear. This is a Kane Industries hat. It's a Fabricators hat, okay? So it's got a super short bill. The front here, where my thumb is padded, okay? And what that does is inside your helmet, it sits where this front pad is. So it just gives you that extra padding, you know, for your helmet, okay? So you got that extra padding, and then with the short bill, it can come up over. So you can actually wear your grinding shields or your welding helmets with this hat. I've been a big fan of them. They fit great. He has multiple sizes. I got a relatively big head, unfortunately. So hats aren't the easiest thing for me to find. This thing's been really solid. Kane Industries. He's like an Instagram welder, you know, kind of just like, honestly, I don't know his backstory, but I'm pretty sure he just got super popular off of Instagram, and he's a solid younger kid. Again, I like supporting those kind of guys. So here we are, finally at the rear end, okay? So we got my 4-link plates, my Tin Soldier 4-link plates, all right? And what I did is I welded the doublers on, okay? So I bought some bolts, and these bolts are 2 3/4 long, okay? 2 3/4 long, 1/2-inch bolt, fine thread. I got them from McMaster Car. And what I do, and I'll post a picture right now, is I bolt them all together with the doublers on the correct side, and then there's a 1/4-inch gap between the two because there's 2 doublers on the inside of the stack up. And then I'll stick a piece of 1/4-inch aluminum in that gap. You'll see that in the picture. And then so I bolt that all together, and that really minimizes the warpage. The whole thing creates a big heat sink, and then I'll go through and weld them all up. That one's still hot. I'm not gonna touch that one. So we'll go through, weld them all up. you can see the TIG welding. Again, I don't do this every day, unfortunately, but with the right equipment, you really do get some good coverage. And, you know, these will work. These right here are really just to give some more structure in this area, and then also kind of give something for the bolts to, like, you know, grip onto and wear to, and you're not really messing up your base plate. So after I bolted those together and finish welded all the doublers, it's time to kind of make them a assembly at that point, right? So I took some 1-inch quarter wall tubing, some aluminum tubing from McMaster-Carr. So it's a 1/2-inch hole on the inside, 1/4-inch wall, 1-inch OD. And unfortunately right now I don't have lathe access. I mean, technically I do. I got a couple friends that I could go use their lathe, but they're like an hour away. So I got a buddy at work that was able to do this for me. And he took that tubing, that aluminum tubing, 1/2-inch ID, 1-inch OD, 1/4-inch wall, and cut 0.755 lengths. So the Heim joints that are going to go in here are going to be 3/4, okay, 3/4 wide. And so I just gave it an extra 5 thou clearance. All right. So you don't have to do that. You really could make these 3/4 on the money, because, you know, there will be some flex and stuff like that. And usually when you do weld it, no matter how good you clamp this thing down, unless you're bolting it to a chunk of aluminum, you're really going to get warpage still. So these do have a little bit of warpage, and usually it benefits for you and kind of holds it open. But keeping it clamped like this will keep it as straight as possible, especially once you weld it to the tube. Once you weld it to the tube, you're going to start getting rid of all that warpage. You could, if you don't have the ability to use a lathe at all, the next best thing is to get a piece of 3/4-inch square stock. And that's 3/4-inch square stock will do the same thing. Now you notice that this is a little bit looser, not by much. So what you could do is you could either put some tape on there or some aluminum foil and just give yourself a few extra thou width. And then you can just clamp this in there, you know, in a couple different spots. Some 3/4-inch tubing can be picked up at any steel mill, steel supply place. You know, I have an Alro next to me. So that's a good way to do that. So if you don't have any ability to cut a good width, if you have a saw like that, you could probably get away with it with like a belt sander and really fine tune it. If not, something like this, a couple layers of aluminum foil, and you'll get your basically exact dimension. All right, so you're going to clamp it together like that. And then there's 4 holes here. This upper 1-inch hole and this lower 1.5-inch hole are going to be braces that go to the rear end. These center 2 are 1.25 inches. So I got some 1.25 inch DOM 120 wall, and I just stick them in the center here. Okay, so I just center them up. So the total width here is 1.25 inches, because you got 3/4 here and then 1/4 on each side, and it's 1.25 inches. I cut these at 1 1/8 inches. All right, and that's going to give me, you know, just about a 1/16 or so on each side, to give me a nice little pocket to weld in. Okay, and you can see on this one, that's exactly what we did, right? So we welded this up. You can see them inside there. Got those welded up, and that locks this in at the dimension you need it. So you got good shoulder bolts in there. I do have some 3/8 bolts that I keep in the backside while I'm welding these. And basically I weld it just like this, where I got 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, and then I'll weld these in. And that's gonna lock this thing at that width you want. And then that way, when I'm ready, I can take this and slide it up on the tube, and I'm not fighting 2 separate plates. when you're fighting two separate plates, they can rock around and do all kinds of weird stuff. When they're locked together like this and straight and good, it's much easier to get them up on the rear end and get them exactly where you want them. Now for these braces that I mentioned, so this lower 1.5 inch, I have some 1.5 inch chromoly 095 wall. All right, this chromoly I polished up on my belt sander with the Scotch-Brite wheel. And then I'm going to run those on the lower holes underneath the rear end. So it's gonna sit somewhere like that, okay? And then from that bar, I will weld a brace from here to that bar. And then I'll also kind of put a little like toe strap spot so that someone can like quick hook me and like pull me up on a trailer or something like that if they need to, pull me off the rear end if they, you know, for whatever reason, if it needs to be pulled from the rear end, there's going to be a little hook spot right there. Okay. And then this upper bar, this 1 inch upper bar here, okay, that's sitting at the top here. This 1 inch upper bar is going to come across to here. So this 1.5 inch will be cut short and it will go from the forelink to the side of the housing. And that's just going to lock the forelinks all together and lock it to the rear, or lock it to the housings, lock the tubes all together, because this thing will be fully welded all the way around, both sides of this. And then it'll be that double brace. So 2 braces coming up to the housing here and here, that lower brace, which will also act as a jack point too if I ever need to jack it up. That should be a nice strong point too. That little hoop that I'll do will be level, not centered. And then that way it's kind of flat and has a good jack spot. And then after that, I'll have those front tubes made. I'll probably use either some 1 inch or 1.25 inch chromoly. I haven't decided. But those tubes will go from out here to the center of the pinion somewhere, maybe underneath or to this. I haven't really decided yet. So the next video will be me getting these onto the rear end, getting everything lined up, and start tack welding the rear end together. Getting the brace bars in, because the brace bars will also lock both of them in the same position. So one won't be rotated more than the other with that lower brace bar in there to help really lock it in the same position. So that'll be the next video. I hope you guys learned a little bit about my welding setup. I hope you learned a little bit about the technique of getting these 4-link plates together. My Instagram has a ton of pictures, a ton of updates on the rear end, a little bit more detail and stuff like that. So make sure you click on the Instagram link below. I always keep the Instagram link in the description. If you're looking for 4-link brackets, I highly recommend Tin Soldiers. Team Z is another good one. 2 good companies to support. So yeah, you guys have a good night and take it easy and see you on the next one. Thank you.